Hello everyone and welcome back to Bitwig Studio and Music Production. This is lesson 3.28 and this is just going to be a bit of signal flow review. So we've gone over and covered each of our time / duration based effects that we have bundled with Bitwig Studio, and now we're at a point where we could probably start to combine some of those, at least in a serial fashion. And when I'm saying serially, I just mean one effect after the other after the other. As time goes on and we start to get into some of our containers, we'll talk about parallel processing. But for right now, let's focus on serial processing and the signal flow that goes along with that. So we've covered some of these things already, but it's important for us to review this because this is one of the most important concepts in music production and in music creation that a lot of times producers don't fully understand. People love to ask, what should come first, the reverb or the delay? Or what should I put in this order? Should I go with EQ followed by this? Or should I put a compressor here, an equalizer there? It really is up to you, and each and every situation depends. It all should be kind of logical though. Whatever you put first is going to happen first. Whatever you put second is going to happen second, etc., etc., etc. So really, if someone were to ask me what should come first, the EQ or the compressor, I would turn around and ask you what should come first, the EQ or compressor. What do you want to have happen to that signal first? And then what do you want to happen to the signal after, etc., etc., etc. So just to go through here and give you guys a quick example of what's going on. The very last sort of line of defense for our signal is the mixer control here, which eventually all of these get summed into our final fader or our master fader over here. So just because you pull back a volume slider here doesn't mean that your signal couldn't still have distorted somewhere along the line in your signal flow path. And if you are having issues where, you put an effect in here, for example, we pull up like a chorus and we play this, we have our little meter down here, and you can tell that we're going into the orange here, but we're totally in the green on this meter. This is indicating to me that the signal itself is stronger just in general here on our waveform than it is when it gets to this point here, when it gets to the track mixer. And if I went to gain here and boosted this up, for example, let's just pull it up a little bit. And now I play it. And you see we're going into the orange on this indicator. No matter how low I pull this down, it doesn't matter. And if we get to the point where we're actually distorting, which we're pretty close, but it's not letting me go all the way. No matter how low I turn this meter down, it's not going to matter. I'm still going to be going into the reds down on my indicator down here. And so it's very important to always watch that and be wary of the signal flow, because in an earlier video when I was messing with the flanger, I was definitely going into the reds over here and I was clipping and I was distorting. And even though I pulled back here, it still doesn't mean that the signal hasn't been corrupted in some way. So always keep an eye on that. Now, when we're doing multiple effects serially, what that entails is loading something like a chorus and following it up with another effect. So let's say we want to go from a chorus into a delay, into, I don't know, this is kind of crazy, into a flanger, followed by a reverb, followed by the blur effect. Okay, this is a serial chain of effects because our signal is going here, it's going into the chorus, followed by going into the delay. After the signal has been chorused and delayed, it's then going to be flanged, then the reverb is going to kick in, and then that final big mess of sound that comes out of the reverb is going to be blurred using the blur effect at the end. And just watch and see the indicators here as I play this chord back. I'm going to pull this back. Turned up. So you can see that I'm gonna have to wait a while for this to stop. But what you're gonna see is that as the signal travels along here, those volume levels are slightly changing. And if we were to rearrange these effects, we're gonna get a totally different sound. Okay, so let's see what happens if I move this chorus to the front now. Right, totally different than if I put it after the delay. And even more different if I pull it after the flanger. Now in this particular example, I was okay all the way through. I was never getting out of control. But let's say my flanger is at the front here. All right, and I'm gonna turn up the feedback quite a bit. Okay, so, you know, we're okay, but let's pretend like this was going into the reds or it was going really, really high. What I could do to control the volume from effect to effect is to actually put in a few different tool devices. So let's say I wanted to make sure I was turning the volume down going into the flanger. I could bring in a tool, pull the amplitude down a few dB, and then be pretty safe. Now, if it was still getting out of control on the output, hopefully not into the reds, I could pull in another tool and turn the volume down there. Now, if at the end my volume's not loud enough, well, obviously I can just pull another tool to the end here and turn it up. So that's really all I wanted to cover with you guys. Just be aware of that. Just always be watching your meters when you have multiple effects going in. And even if you're using third-party plugins and stuff, some of them don't have the greatest metering capabilities in the world. So you need to watch and be really, really careful. And whenever in doubt, throw a tool on either at the front or at the end, and that way you can see what's going on with your levels along your signal flow when you're working serially, as we're doing here. In the next video, we're going to talk about our delay creation assignment, which is going to involve more than just delay. It's going to involve all of our time and duration-based effects. Thank you so much for watching, and you'll hear from me again in the next lesson.